We're Ayin Zion, right? Or
Ayin Zion, correct.
Okay,
77.
Okay, good.
This is a nevuah that Yechezkel is happening. He was brought in a nevuah to the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. V'hinei Pesach heichal Hashem bein ha'ulam uvein hamizbeach. He saw between the antechamber of the heichal and the mizbeach ke'esrim v'chamisha ish, 25 Jews. Listen to this. Shocking. Achoreihem el heichal Hashem. Their backsides was pointed towards the Kodesh Kadosh. Upneim kedma. Their faces were pointed east. Vehema mishtachlim kedma lashemesh. And they're bowing down in the Beis Hamikdash to the sun. Mimashma shenemar upneim kedma. From the fact that it says their face was east, we know that the Kodesh Kadoshim is west. So if we know they're facing east, those two words alone tell me that their backsides were facing the Kodesh Kadoshim. Rather, the pasuk is teaching us something deeper. They would drop their trousers, and they went to the bathroom towards the Kodesh Kadosh. Similar to the
Harold, you're listening carefully, Harold. That's what Kohanim do, man.
No, these were not Kohanim. These were straight 25 people, whoever they were. But this was the avoda of Baal Peor. Last week, the Baal Peor, the avoda to the idol Baal Peor was to go to the bathroom in front of it. But these Jews were doing it to the Kodesh Kadosh. Now, this is not surprising. I mean, we are, those of us learning Navi, we've seen lots of activities that have shocked us in terms of what some of the Jewish people were up to in the times of the Shoftim, right? Pesel Micha, Pilegesh Begiva. So here is this episode. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a number of ministering angels. One of them is Michael. So, Michael, Sarcha Umascha. Michael sounds like the personal angel who takes care of Klal Yisrael. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, listen, your nation is going wrong. Yeah, but we have tzaddikim, forget about these bad people. No, when I'm going to burn them up, and I'm going to burn the tzaddikim up with them. Why? Says the Meforshim, because the tzaddikim weren't protesting enough in terms of the bad activity of the Jews who do bad activity. So again, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that when we see evil being done, we can't be silent. We have to protest. He told the angel who wears white, fill up your pan with coals, and throw it on the city. He stretched out his hand and got the coals. Chofni, who was the person wearing the white, now, the coals went from this kruv to the hands of Gavriel, and they got cooled down a little bit. If it wasn't for the fact that they were cooled down by being put in the hand of Gavriel, lo nishtar misoneim shel Yisrael, certainly there would be no Jew survived. Uksi, v'nei ha'ish lavush habadim asher keses b'mosnav meishiv davar le'emar asisi kasher tzivisoni. The Kruv said, I did what I was supposed to do. So Gavriel, who had saved the Jewish people because he cooled down the coals, was removed from the inner chamber. They punished him with 60 pulses of fire. If you didn't do, you didn't do. But if you did it already, why didn't you do the way you were ordered? The avdis leslach ein meshivin ala kalkola. You don't give the calculation back if you were going to do some kind of punishment and the punishment didn't get carried out fully. You just say you do it beremez. You hint to him that he did wrong. Aisulu dubiel sar de parsoi v'ukma b'charike. Now, the Persians have their own ministering angel called Dubiel. And he took the place of Gavriel, wherever Gavriel used to stand, because they threw Gavriel out. This Malach of Persia was put in his place. V'shimesh esrim v'echad yom, and he served in that place 21 days. Hainu d'chsiv v'sar malchus paras omed l'negdi esrim v'echad yom. That's why in the Nevuah of Yechezkel it says that he saw the malchus of Persia standing for 21 days. Michal came to help Yechezkel. And I was remaining with the Persian kings. Now, because of the 21 days that this Malach stayed in the Makom of Gavriel, the Persians were granted 21 kings, Uparvisa de Mashig, and the port of Mashig, which I guess was one of their big ports. So the Persian angel wanted a contract to be signed that the Jewish people would pay taxes to the Persians. Kosvule, they wrote it, Kisvuli Rabbanon Bakarga. He wanted the Chachamim to pay the tax as well. Kisvule, they wrote it for him. Be'idnu debol lemichtim, before they signed it, Omer Gavriel Machriah Pargot, even though Gavriel was thrown out and he was outside the curtain, Omer Shav Lachem Ashkimei Kul Machrei Sheves Ochli Lechem Atzovim Kain, Yitei Li Didos Sheina. And what does that mean? Ma Kain Yididos Sheina. Omer Rav Yitzchak, Elu Nishosein Shel Tamid Chacham Shemenadidos Sheina Ba'olam Hazeh, V'zoichos Alabot. The women, the wives of the Talmidei Chachamim, they don't sleep because they're waiting for their husbands to come home from learning Torah, and therefore there's Zoich L'Olam Haba, and this should be their reward that they have to pay taxes. But they didn't listen to Gavriel, who was trying to defend the Talmidei Chachamim to prevent them from having to pay taxes. So Gavriel appealed directly to Kodesh Baruch Hu. If you had all the great wise men of the Goyim on one scale and Daniel on the other scale, wouldn't you find that Daniel tipped the scale? So Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted to, who is the one who is declaring all this merit for my children? Gavriel. So they told the Kodesh Baruch Hu, it's Gavriel. Amalem Yavo. Oh, he can come back in from Achrei Apargud. He can come back into the inner chamber. That's what it meant in the Pasuk in Daniel, that I came back because of your words, because it was compared to Daniel. Armalu Leo. So they said, come in. Ailinu, they brought him back. But he found that Dubiel was still holding on to that contract that about taxes. So Gavriel tried to grab it away from him. Bola. So Duviel swallowed Gavriel. But that hadn't been signed yet. When it was signed, but when he swallowed Gavriel, it erased. That's why we find in the Persian kingdom, there are those that pay the taxes and those that don't pay the taxes because it never got signed properly. Then, then he saw a nevuah that the officer of the Greeks came. Again, Gavriel was screaming that the kings of Greece should not dominate the Jews. But again, nobody listened to Gavriel. Okay. These are mystical things, obviously. Now, we're trying to find sources for the Inuyim of Yom Kippur. Where do we see that lack of washing your body is called an Inui? I'm not going to kill you of Yosra Kohen because you carried the Aron. This is Shlomo HaMelech talking, and he's telling of Yosra, you carried the Aron, and you also shared in all the afflictions of my father David. That when he was running away from Avshalom, he was hungry, he was tired, he was thirsty in the desert. What does it mean he was tired? Lav merchitza, that he wasn't washed. Or it says that's no. Maybe he was tired because he wasn't wearing shoes. El Amrav Yitzchak mehacha. Mayim karim al nefesh ayefa. That cool water on a soul will get rid of, I guess, of fatigue. But maybe that doesn't mean washing. Dilma mishti. Maybe that means drinking. It doesn't say miksiv ba nefesh. It doesn't mean the water goes inside the nefesh. Al nefesh ayefa, on a tired nefesh, which means on your body, which is what washing is. And that seems to be the proof that the Gemara settles with. How do we know that not wearing shoes is called Inui D'chsiv? The David Ola b'mala hazesim, Ola uvocha v'rosh l'chafui v'holech yachef. His head was unwashed. V'holech yachef, he went without shoes. Yachef mima, lav minilas hasan, doesn't mean without shoes. Where it says, no, maybe vidilma misusya maratka. Maybe it's, he doesn't have a horse and a chariot. Take off your shoes. So he became naked. And Yachef means without shoes. So maybe it means that you wore tattered shoes. When it means naked, does it mean aron mamish? Elab got him blue. It means he was wearing shmatis. So again, we don't have a proof about nilas that taking off your shoes is an inui. Mini raglech mi yachef. This is Yirmiyah Navi comforting the Jewish people that at some point you will not be unshoed. Ugronech mitziman, you won't be thirsty. Stay away from sin, so your feet will not be without shoes. Don't speak idle things, and therefore you'll be able not to avoid thirst. Okay, so we see that Nilas Asandal is Inu. Tashmishamita Dikri Numinalan. Where do we see that refraining from relations is called Inui? Imtanes Benoisoi, Lavan told Yaakov, don't cause affliction to my daughters, Loshen Inui, the Imtikach Noshim. So Im Ta'ana Mitashmish. Ta'ana means a wife can demand relations a certain amount of time. And if it's held back from her, it's an inui for her. So here we see that lack of tashmish is an inui. The imtikach meant don't marry mitzaros, don't marry other wives besides Rachel and Leah. Amy, Idivide mitzaros, maybe both refer to.
Well, I don't understand how we can take from to learn something from what Lovin said. First of all, did Lovin speak Lashon HaKodesh? And second of all, how can we take what Lovin said and learn from that something? I mean, it seems a little strange. When we want to learn from one place, when Moshe sent over the Torah, he wrote the Torah. He wrote it like a storybook? Did he quote Lavan, or he just said this is what Lavan might have said, but not necessarily Lashon HaKodesh? It's Moshe's word that he wrote it. Lavan didn't even speak Lashon HaKodesh. Maybe didn't even speak a different language. And why does the Gemara always use Lavan to learn something from him, from his word?
Okay, so first of all, it's a pasuk in the Torah that Lavan said to Yaakov, "Im ta'anes b'nosai." So first of all, why do you say that they didn't speak whatever Hebrew was spoken in Canaan in 1600 BCE or 1700 BCE when Lavan and Yaakov lived? That was the Hebrew that was that time. Later on, Moshe wrote it in Hebrew. We know that because later on in that same parsha with Lavan and Yaakov, they called the pile of stones Yigar Sadusa, which were Aramaic words, and the Torah, those are the only two Aramaic words in the whole Torah. So there they used Aramaic. Lavan Arami, I mean, his basic language was Aramean, but whether Moshe Rabbeinu to inform us what the dialogue. He used the word ta'aneh. So we have the right to learn from that word ta'aneh. What did it mean? It means inui, afflicting. Now, what kind of infliction? We're now learning has to do with tashmish. Why do you have a problem? We learn from Paro, Yom Huledet Shel Paro. And from there, Chazal learned that you can do a Yom Huledet. I mean, Alan? Hello?
He went quiet.
Well, he asked a good question. So,
I mean, you learn so much from Yitro too. I mean, and who said he spoke?
What about Balak? Why doesn't he ask about Balak?
And what about Bilam?
Bilam, Matovu Alecha Yaakov. We say it in school every morning.
Bracha we take. I don't know about the rest. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So that's by the way,
All right.
Chazal say, who was Bilam? Lavan. Well, it's a Gilgul of Lavan because he was 500 years later, but it's a Gilgul. Say all the Meforshim. Anyways.
Okay.
So
All right. Sure.
It says ve'imtikach, which means it's a second type of inui. One is inui refraining from tashmish, and the other is ve'imtikach, marrying other wives. Because Lavan knew that Yaakov already had two pilet.
Hello? Hi, Daddy. Is it too late for me to talk to Jojo? No, wait a minute. Jojo?
Lavan knew.
I will need the phone pretty quickly.
Lavan knew that Yaakov had pilekshim, Bila and Zilpa. So number one, he wanted to make sure that he didn't elevate those pilagshim to full wives, and also he didn't want them to marry Yaakov to marry new women. Dumya di imtikach. Now miksiv imtikach ve'imtaneh. It says imtaneh ve'imtikach ksiv, which means two different things. One tashmish, one new weddings. Armalei Rav Papa Labaya. Ha tashmish gufa ikri inui. There is an example where the act of tashmish itself is called an affliction. Tichsiv vayishkav osa vayaneh Shem. When he raped Dinah, or when he had relations with Dinah, it says it afflicted her. Armalei asam shina mibios acheros. He had bia shelo kedarka. He had anal relations. Rashi says shabola shelo kedarka, and that's an affliction. That would not be pleasant. Weiter. Ton Rabbanon. Osir lirchotz miktzas gufo kechol gufo. You're not allowed to wash even part of your body. However, if you were filthy with dung, dirt, you can wash it off. You can't anoint with oil even part of your body. However, if he's sick or he has boils on his head, that's not a problem. Now, again, it must be, the Shulchan Aruch says, it must be, we're talking about a chola she'ein bo sakona. Because if it's a chola she'esh bo sakona, we wouldn't need a pasuk to tell me, or a drasha, or whatever, to tell me that you're allowed to do it. You're allowed to do anything. If it's a sakona, so it must be chola she'ein bo sakona, that even in such a case, you could do it on Yom Kippur. A mother can wash one hand with water and give her child to eat with that clean hand. It's not a problem. Shammai Zaken didn't want to do that. He didn't want to use this kula. So they were goizer on him because it's so important to feed the children that he should wash both of his hands to feed. My time. Omer Abai Mishum Shivta. Oh, washing your hands is because of Ruach Ra. There's a demon on our hands. That's why we wash our hands in the morning. So you got to remove the demon with the water. If a person is going to greet his father or his Rebbe, or somebody who's bigger than him in Torah, and he sees him approaching from another side of the river, you can go up into your neck in water, even though it's Yom Kippur. What about the Rav going to the Talmud? Toshma. Ashi told me that we saw Zeiri crossing a river to go to his Talmud. Rav Ashi Amar no. Rav Chia Bar Ashi the Ozil Gabi the Zeiri Rabbi. No, he got the story wrong. It was the Talmud that went to the Rebbe. And in fact, the halacha is Eina Rav Rishai Lavar B'Mayim B'Yom Kippurim K'dei Lalechas Al Tamida. But the Talmud can go to the Rebbe. or to his father, up until his neck. Both coming and going, both coming and coming back home. Rava Sharlevne Aver Yamina Lamever B'Maila and Turei Peri. Rava allowed the people of this city to cross the river to watch their fruit, even on Yom Kippur, so it wouldn't be stolen. Armele Abayla Rava Tanya the Messiah. There's a brisa to support it. Shoymrei Peres Oivernat Savar B'Mayim Ben Choshishin. Those that are whose job is to watch Peiros can cross a river even on Yom Kippur. Rav Yosef Sharlu Livnei Ki Tarbu Lamever B'Mayla Mesi Lapirka. He permitted the Bnei Ha'ir to cross in the river to listen to the drasha. Lemezel Lo Sharlu, only to come, but to go back home, he did not matir. If you don't allow them to come, if you don't allow them to go back home, they won't come in the first place next year. So the heter is they're allowed to go back. The Poiske Halacha used this concept. We've mentioned this many times about the Hatzalah people on Shabbos. That if a Hatzalah person travels, you're allowed to travel on Shabbos, you're allowed to come back home. Because if they don't allow them to come back home, they won't go in the first place when the emergencies needed to go. Based on this, Ata Machshilin Lasid Lavo. However, the Shulchan Aruch doesn't paskin that way, at least regarding Shmira Peiros. To go and watch Peiros, you're allowed to cross the water, but not to go home. Regarding the drasha, I don't have the halacha is not brought. The halacha psuka is not brought here. Ikid yami sharlu lemesi sharlu lemezel. The other Mandover says you're allowed to come and go. Armelei abai bisham lemesi lechaye. I understand to allow them to come. Fine, el my time. Otherwise, if you don't let them to go back home, they won't go in the first place. Rav Yehuda, Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda, Avakami Aguda Dinar Papa Amaver de Chatztad. They were standing on the river named Papa near the bridge, near a place called Tatzdet. Baba Koi Rami bar Papa Machisa, and Rami bar Papa was on the other side. Ramalu called. They called out to him. Can we cross into the water on Yom Kippur? Because we want to ask you a shaila. You can cross, but keep your arm in the shirt, so the arm, you just get your clothes wet. Yes, you can cross, but you got to keep your shirt in your arm in the shirt. Even during the week, would we allow somebody to cross the water? That we measured the depth, and it was elef ama. You're allowed to go up to your ankles. Up into your knees. Up to your thighs. That means if it's beyond your thighs, it's too dangerous. You're not allowed to go up to your neck. That's a flowing river that has current. Then above your thigh, you shouldn't go. It's too dangerous. But if the water is still, you can go up to your neck. And this body of water that we're talking about is La'asid Lavo. There's going to be a river that flows out of the Kodesh Kadoshim and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, as we're going to learn. Yachol Yavrin B'Sichu Tabelomar Kigoa Mai Mesachu. Mai Mesachu Shiyuta. You could sail there, swim there. You can call it l'shaita saicha, like surfing. Yachol Yavrin B'Burni Ketana. Maybe you could pass this water in a small boat. You can't. It's going to be. You won't be able to go. Maybe a big boat. You still won't be able to travel it. My mashma. You won't be able to do it in a boat that hunters use. Urbuni Rabasi Lo Tigozina. You shouldn't go in any kind of boat, even if it's big. Even the Malach HaMavis doesn't have reshus to pass in this special body of water. Because the Malach HaMavis flies around. Even the guy who flies around doesn't have permission to go in this body of water. Mayana, I would say, this spring that is going to come out of the Kodesh Kadoshim, but it's like the antenna of a grasshopper. That's how the width of it. But it gets wider and wider. Becomes like one of the threads of a warp and a woof. And one is smaller than the other. The woof is bigger than the warp. It becomes like the bigger woof or the warp, whichever is bigger. Once once it reaches the opening of the Azor Nasa Kafi Pach cotton, it's like the opening of a small jug. That there's going to be a big water that comes out of the Pesach Habayis. And the Gemara will go into, think about the following. A bacteria divides, Harold will remember this because he was also a bacteriologist. We were both undergraduate bacteriology majors. I followed, so he told me all the professors that he took. A bacteria divides every 20 minutes. So if you start with one bacteria, so 20 minutes later, you have two bacteria. 20 minutes later, you got four bacteria. So it's two to the second, two to the third, two to the fourth, right? At the end of 24 hours, you have billions of bacteria. That's the power. It's just every 20 minutes. So whatever, it's 2 to the 10th or it's going to be, you have billions of bacteria just because they divide every 20 minutes. So that's what's going on here. It's some kind of equation here where it starts, the width of this river starts like the antenna of a grasshopper, then it becomes like a thread, then it becomes like, and it's going to, 2 to the whatever power until it's going to be this massive thing, and we'll learn about that tomorrow. Okay?